All right, good evening, everyone. We'll open the meeting. Council had a closed session prior to this meeting, so we'll reconvene the regular council meeting at 7 p.m. And I will read the acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement. As visitors on the land, the town of Bradford is going to be acknowledged that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Shnabik Nation, which includes Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We recognize that the Huron-Wendat, Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee nations have walked on this territory over time. In times of great change, we recognize more than ever the importance of honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation, respect, and good health for all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. So thank you. And thank you for joining us tonight. All right, we're on to Section 5, which is adoption of the agenda. I have recognition that the Special Council agenda dated September 9th, 2025 be adopted as printed. Moving a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Giordano. Questions, concerns with the agenda? I will announce before we get any further that Councillor Ferragini is on vacation and Councillor Dehaney is working this evening, so they're unable to attend tonight. Okay, seeing no questions about the agenda adoption, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest in the general nature. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be declaring at 7.2 of the agenda. I'm an employee of Campslide Manufacturing, which is a division of Magna International, which also owns and operates a plant here in town on line 8, 306698. As you know, the council will not be making any decisions tonight on any of the proposed official plan amendments, but on the advice of the Integrity Commissioner, I will declare disqualifying interest relating on any matter involving the Magna International. I will refrain from offering any comments or questions on the matters that could be related to Magna property. I will recuse myself from any future discussions when this report comes back that has any items relating to the Magna International. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Deputy Mayor. Okay, we're now moving on to 7, the public information meeting applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments. So I have 7.1, introduction and purpose of meeting. Bear with me, it's a lengthy report here. This meeting is a statutory public meeting held pursuant to sections 17, 22, and 34 of the Planning Act to discuss amendments to the zoning bylaw 2010-050 and seek public input on the town's official plan update for growth management to 2051. The town has received applications that have been deemed complete under the Planning Act and is therefore required to hold this public meeting as part of the application review process. Members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak following the presentations. Comments presented at this public meeting are being recorded by staff. Personal information is being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Questions regarding the collection and use of personal information should be directed to the clerk. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Town of Bradford, Gwillimbury to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Bradford before the processed bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submission at a public meeting or make a written submission to the Town of Bradford before the proposed bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. So it's section 7.2, it's the public information meeting for the official plan amendments. Application, public information meeting, part 1, intensification first, growth management exercise to plan 2051 official plan updates. So I have a planning report. The planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Consultants Frank and Camille from WSP will provide a presentation. I invite you up, gentlemen, to provide that presentation.
Just while they're coming up, there are a few seats still at the front, and I think there's chairs to the left if anyone needs one.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Frank Marzel with WSP, and with me this evening I have Kamal Kaptanovich as well. We're here to present to you all this evening on the Growth Management Strategy and Part 1 OPA Intensification First project. Next slide. So today's presentation will focus on Part 1 of the Growth Management Strategy project. We'll begin with a review of the work completed to date and key milestones that have been achieved. We will then summarize the feedback that has been received through the various engagement events that have been held to date. The proposed policy changes will be presented in 4 parts. Each of the 4 parts is focused on different aspects of intensification within built-up areas of Bradford. The presentation this evening will conclude with an overall discussion of the future of employment areas in the town. Next slide, please. Just a brief recap on our project team. As you know, WSP has been leading the project for over a year. We've been working very diligently with town staff, as well as with Watson and Associates, who helped do some of the background work for us. Next slide. So the project timeline and where we're headed and where we are today. As mentioned in the meeting, today's meeting is intended to discuss Part 1 of the Growth Management Strategy, known as the Intensification First Review. Part 2 of the project is focused on settlement area boundary expansions, or SABE. Work on Part 2 has been ongoing in the background and will be ramping up throughout the fall. Looking at the left portion of the slide, you can see a list of the key project milestones since we began this work last June. There have been several rounds of analyses ranging from high-level review, provincial policy direction, right down to detailed recommendations about the capacity for intensification in different parts of Bradford. These reports are all available for review on the town's website. Next slide. Some of the engagement summary. We've done a lot of good work to date, meeting with many individuals in the community, hosting many events throughout the entirety of the project. There's a general understanding that the MTSA from the public is a key area for the future of Bradford and that it needs to be planned very carefully. There's also strong interest in Part 2 of the project, the settlement boundary expansion areas. Engagement for this phase of the project will be ramping up in the fall. Finally, we've also outreached with many members of the community through the Carrot Fest recently in August, the public open house towards the end of August, and then earlier on in the project at the visioning workshop. We're also continuing conversations with the Indigenous communities to get their feedback as well. Next slide. So, Bradford's Intensification First approach. The principle behind Intensification First is to facilitate the redevelopment of sites within the existing settlement area of the town. This has the ability to create a denser, more vibrant downtown and avoids too much expansion of the urban area into farmlands. The core feature of this approach is a dense built-up corridor running along Holland Street from Bridge Street to Side Road 10. Holland Street does not have a uniform character or build form along its entire length. Proposed policies have identified 3 segments, each with unique character and built form, which we'll get into later. The new policies will also implement an intensification target that was established by the county. 42% of new housing units will be constructed within the existing built-up area. Next slide. Developing a vision for the MTSA, or Major Transit Station area. The project followed the following processes to develop a vision for the area. Initial land uses and initial feedback was developed in the fall of 2024. Public feedback on the land use options was received at the visioning workshop and again at an open house in January of 2025. You can see some of the comments on the screen there. Based on the feedback, the project team refined the MTSA mapping, developed a vision statement, and drafted new policies for the official plan in spring 2025. The vision statement was presented at the public open house on August 21st, 2025, which recognizes that the major transit station area will evolve into a vibrant, transit-oriented community, one that will maintain Bradford's cultural heritage while promoting higher densities, strong urban design, and multimodal transportation. Next slide. So the vision for the MTSA is implemented through sub-area policies that specify heights and uses for the various areas. Bridge Street, as we know, is constrained by the Holland River floodplain and is not an appropriate location for significant development at this time. Dissette Street is the main location for intensification. Buildings up to 12 stories are permitted along Dissette. Holland Street within the MTSA permits up to 8 stories. This transitions down to 6 stories in the Holland Street strategic growth area. The residential areas, highlighted in yellow, adjacent to the Holland Street, have new provisions that allow for greater heights closer to the main street. Permitted heights transition back to low-rise residential neighborhoods as you move away from the main street and into the low-rise neighborhood. Next slide. So the major transit station area sub-areas have been divided into 4: the Dissette Street corridor, Bridge Street corridor, residential edges, excuse me, and the Holland Street corridor. These are 4 sub-areas identified. As we noted on the previous slide, each sub-area is planned to support a specific number of future residents and jobs, the majority of which being along the Dissette Street corridor. Overall, the plans will ensure that Bradford is able to achieve its overall MTSA density target of 150 people and jobs per hectare across the entire MTSA. Next slide, please. The Bridge Street corridor marks the eastern entrance of the town, serving as a link to Bradford and the riverfront. The corridor has become vital for transporting goods and now supports both farming, drainage, and recreational activities along the Holland River. While development is currently limited by the presence of the floodplain, Council has reaffirmed its intent to work with all relevant agencies to evaluate the potential for future mixed-use redevelopment in this area. Proposed policies for the Bridge Street corridor aim to create a destination that recognizes the area's cultural significance. The policies will promote recreation and placemaking opportunities. Next slide, please. The Holland Street West Strategic Growth Area, which is the town's traditional main street, and that's identified as an SGA. Height limits are carried over from the current official plan that was approved in 2023. These heights adequately create opportunities for intensification while preserving the built form of a traditional main street along Holland Street West. New policies for this area focus on creating safe, walkable, and multimodal streets. Next slide. The Holland Street Mixed-Use Corridor. The Holland Street West Corridor is Bradford's main commercial strip and the area where residents shop for most of their needs. Today, the corridor is defined by wide streets and large parking lots. This area is envisioned to evolve into a dense, pedestrian-friendly corridor that supports both residential and business growth. New developments will connect the surrounding community and create focal points for community activities. We recognize that this long-term vision for the area will be implemented gradually. The existing commercial uses will continue to be an important part of this community. Next slide, please. So on to updating the employment areas and conversion criteria as part of the OPA process. The updated policies regarding employment areas now reflect new direction from the province. Industrial uses that need protection from sensitive uses are permitted in employment areas. This also ensures that key locations along Bradford Bypass are protected for industries that require access to transportation infrastructure. And updated conversion criteria and conditions serve to ensure that any employment lands do not get converted or used efficiently. Next slide. So the Highway 400 employment lands. Over 115 hectares of lands are now being added for development from the Employment Lands Reserve. This was a result of the County of Simcoe Land Needs Assessment. These additional lands will ensure sufficient supply of employment lands to 2051. And new policies create stricter permissions for land uses in the light blue, which is industrial logistics, and the industrial logistics designation. This responds to the new definition of employment areas that was introduced in the Planning Act. Thank you, and that concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you for that. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. It's now the public participation. So members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and ask questions. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. So I have a few members that signed up for this. I'll go through them first, and then if there's others that'd like to speak, please just raise your hand and we'll call you up. So at this time I have Phil Robinson in regard to the growth plan. So Deputy Mayor is leaving the table so that he's not part of this, so. This section, because Phil's with Magna, correct? I am, yes. Yes, okay. I will say the Deputy Mayor. Okay, no problem. Go ahead, sir.
All right, good evening. My name's Phil Robinson, the General Manager at Dortech Magna here in Bradford, West Gwillimbury. We've been operating at 3066 Line 8 since 2004, employing over 400 people in advanced manufacturing. We're proud of our role as a major employer and a community partner. I'm here to provide input into the town growth management study and express our concerns with the proposed land use change at 3100 Side Road 10. Our facility was intentionally located in an industrial zone away from residential and other sensitive use to avoid land conflicts. As an advanced manufacturer, our operations, such as metal stamping, generate noise, vibrations, and emissions. These are regulated under our environmental compliance approval issued by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks. Introducing sensitive land use nearby raises serious compatibility concerns and could jeopardize our ability to comply with our ECA, potentially threatening our continued operations and further expansions. This would not only impact the business, but also the bordering community that benefits from our presence. While we understand that berms and Class 4 designation have been proposed, we do not believe these measures are adequate to address the risk. A Class 4 designation permits sensitive uses near industrial operations, but does not resolve the underlying compatibility issues and compliance risks. We respectfully urge the town to maintain the current industrial land use designation for 3100 Side Road 10. Dortech is committed to being a long-term contributor to Bradford, West Gwillimbury prosperity and to participating consecutively in the town's growth and planning. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you for that. And you'll turn that into the clerk then if you have that prepared statement. Thank you so much. It will be noted. Next up on the list right now, I have Keith McKinnon. KLM Planning.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, members of the public. As stated, my name is Keith McKinnon. I'm a planner with KLM Planning Partners, Inc., here on behalf of FNB Developments, care of DG Group. The mapping that is being passed around is a schedule that's in your existing official plan today, and the lands of which we wanted to raise some concerns is on the north side of Crossland Boulevard, west of Professor Day, east of Langford, and immediately south of the future bypass. These lands are currently designated in your official plan as industrial commercial. They have been for quite some time. We have participated in numerous official plan updates, the last one being, of course, OPAs 15 and 16 with respect to these lands, and falling out of OPA 15 and 16. The elementary public school was built in that location. The current definition now that's been provided by the province, both through the Planning Act and the new provincial planning statement, clearly defines what is considered to be employment land versus what not to be considered employment land. Given the locational criteria of these parcels, these certainly would not meet the definition of employment land, and in our view would be better suited for medium density residential uses. That would certainly be much more compatible with the existing low-density residential uses on the south side of Crossland, and of course, Ron Simpson Neighborhood Park in that location as well. And then further to the east, also on the south side of Crossland, is the most recent development of which was approved for townhouses immediately west of Professor Day on the south side of Crossland. So it certainly is in keeping with what is in the area. So our request, Your Worship and members of council, is that through this process, obviously you're going to be examining your employment land needs. We think the work that Watson has done is a little aggressive in terms of how much employment land would be absorbed between now and to 2051, which is the planning horizon. So we do feel that these lands were well suited to not be employment land and to have a medium density residential designation in its place. And as such, we're requesting is through this process to have the land use changed for these parcels of land. So with that, Your Worship, I've also provided written submission with the attachment as well. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
We'll certainly turn that to council if they have questions after, but we're with the public now, so if there's questions, we'll call you back up for sure, sir. So thank you for that submission and that paperwork. And like you mentioned, clerks have that paper. So next up, I have Linda Adams, but you didn't check off that you wanted to speak. So we're okay. Thank you. So my next is Kevin Bichard. Just press the mic, sorry. There you go.
Normally my voice carries, but good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Kevin Bichard. I'm a land use planner with IPS Consulting Services. My office is in Barrie, Ontario, 647 Welland Road, Unit 9A. I'm here to represent two clients, and I'll begin with the least complex first, and then beg your indulgence on the second. I represent Augund Investments, who are owners of industrial lands at 3664 Line 8 in Bradford. The lands are at the northeast corner of Line 8 and the 5th Side Road. The intention of the official plan amendment is to include these lands within, or take them out of the employment land reserve, and provide for an employment land use designation. I'm here to establish as a matter of record that my clients endorse this official plan amendment, endorse Schedule 1. We would like to continue and will continue to work with staff to refine the list of permitted uses that are set out in the official plan amendment, and hope to get greater alignment between the proposed uses in the official plan amendment and the recent application that we've submitted to the municipality for employment land industrial development on the property. That concludes my presentation, my first presentation. I also represent Your Worship and Mayor and members of council. I also represent the CPA 5 landowner group in the vicinity of the bypass and Yonge Street, north of the bypass and west of the Yonge Street. These include lands such as 2693 9th Line, 3006 Yonge Street, 3031 Yonge Street, 2980 Yonge Street, 2947 Yonge Street, all of course in the town. And on the behalf of the CPA 5 landowners, we're pleased to provide this response. And this is going to sound a little bit like the previous presentation that you heard, because it involves the conversion of an historic employment land use designation on the property. We recognize that the purpose of the initial phase of the town's growth management strategy is to optimize the official plan land use designations, either through intensification, as you've heard in the presentation, or conversion of lands to meet the requirement in Scope 7 for for an additional 449 approximately additional community lands. Also, a key component of this amendment is to minimize the potential or requirement for conversion of agricultural lands by optimizing the use of existing lands designated in the official plan. Our deputation raises 3 points or 3 issues or questions for discussion. And the first, and it was raised by the previous deputant and another, are the CPA 5 industrial commercial land use designation, is it consistent with the current definition of area of employment as set out in the revised PPS 2024? That's the first question. The second question, are the CPA 5 industrial commercial lands required to meet the 2051 growth management strategy inventory requirements as has been set out in the Watson report? And the third point is, are the proposed employment land conversion criteria reasonable and appropriate as they relate to the CPA 5 lands, and particularly the secondary plan terms of reference providing for consideration of conversion of some of those lands as part of the secondary plan process? In sum, our deputation requests that the subject lands be excluded from the employment land 2051 inventory, principally because they no longer meet the provincial policy framework for employment lands under the Planning Act and the PPS 2024 definition. There was a documentation that was submitted, a letter submitted to Council, and if you have it, you can refer to it as I go through. The letter, and of course, the supplementary report that we had prepared by a land economist, Parcel Economics, has been distributed to staff for consideration as part of my comments. Like the previous deputant, the current land use designation on the subject lands includes an industrial commercial designation. It also includes low density residential and residential built up area. But predominantly a substantial portion of the lands historically have an employment industrial commercial designation abutting the Bradford bypass. So the first question I raised in my correspondence is whether or not the industrial commercial land use designation is consistent with the Planning Act employment definition. And our conclusion, and I'm not going to read through the letter, but our conclusion is it does not. The employment definition speaks to traditional employment land uses, and by that I mean manufacturing uses, research and development uses, warehousing uses, including logistic operations, retail uses, office uses, associated commercial uses are not contemplated as employment uses any longer under the Planning Act. So there is a need for the municipality, the town, as part of this process, to reconsider its industrial commercial employment designation as it applies to these lands, and not include these lands as part of the employment designation that's being contemplated under its current definition. I want to add one quote from the Watson report, because in that report it's recognized by the town's consultant that these lands do not meet the current definition of employment, areas of employment in the Planning Act. And the Watson report states, quote, while the designation does not meet the definition of employment area according to the PPS 2024, the designation serves as an important function in transitioning between community use areas, residential, and employment areas. I agree with the second part of the statement. However, it doesn't require an employment designation to do so. Part of our secondary plan review process will include consideration of land use designations and the appropriate transition of land use from the bypass, which is a major facility under the provincial policy, and its relationship to sensitive land uses, which of course are residential land uses, which are located further to the north. The PPS 2024 calls on municipalities through policy 2.8.2.4 to assess and update employment areas identified in official plans as appropriate, and to consider the appropriate plan functions of employment areas. In planning for employment areas, planning authorities shall maintain land use compatibility between sensitive land uses and employment areas in accordance with Policy 3.5 of the PPS, which deals with land use compatibility. So I'm reading and paraphrasing the planning policy statement, but what it's saying is there's an obligation as part of this process for the town and other municipalities across Ontario, which they have done, to reconsider the employment land use designations in the context of the new policy that are the new regulations in the Planning Act and provincial policy. This has not been done in our view as part of this process, and we should pause and undertake that process as we go forward. The second question that I raise is whether or not the industrial commercial lands are actually required to meet the 2051 management strategy employee and requirements. In my correspondence and in my submission, I submitted an excerpt from our land economist, Parcel Economics, who has reviewed the Watson report, and without getting into a terrible amount of detail, because economists will be very detailed in their analysis, he identifies that with the removal of the CPA 5 employment lands, there would still be a surplus of available employment lands to meet the 2051 requirement in the growth plan, or I should say, in the planning cycle. This is certainly open to review and discussion to the municipality. We provided our documentation, and we welcome the opportunity to sit down with your planning staff and your economic consultant and come to a determination on this. And again, I'm not suggesting that there should be no transitional land uses between the bypass and the residential, but they should be appropriate. And they
Point of
should
order,
not.
please. Mayor, could we just keep it to the time as constraints, if possible?
Right. I have one more small section, if I can beg your indulgence, and that is dealing with whether or not the employment land conversion criteria are reasonable and appropriate for the CPA 5 lands. And my simple summary statement is that the terms of reference for the secondary plan that is ongoing for the CPA 5 lands considers the opportunity for consideration of conversion of these employment lands to non-employment uses. However, item F, and I want to reference it properly, criterion F, imposes a hard line determination for conversion, separating a separation distance from of 400 meters from the bypass and 800 meters from the interchange. That effectively would remove the majority of these lands for consideration of conversion. So I think that there needs to be some accommodation in this official plan amendment so it doesn't bump up against the previous consideration and commitment of council in the secondary plan considerations. Thank you. I look forward to your questions should they come forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And you've given your statement to the clerk?
Yes, I have,
Okay.
Your Worship.
Okay, next up I have Dan Watchhorn. Just to remind everybody, you have actually 10 minutes to speak. So, and I didn't have a clock on that one, so I apologize if we went over 10 minutes. But I'll have clocks on now to make sure that we keep to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and members of council for the opportunity to speak here. As you said, my name is Dan Watchhorn. I'm a senior planner and registered professional planner with Bousfields, a planning consulting firm, and here representing DG Group, who are a major community builder that have been here for many years and a large landowner in the Bond Head area and the surrounding area. We submitted a letter earlier with similar comments that I'm going to make today, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but just wanted to highlight kind of a few points here this evening. So first of all, I wanted to state that we appreciate the growth management work that has gone on so far in the first phase and look forward to continuing to engage with this phase and the future phases that come up. But we just wanted to mention, kind of key in on to one concern that we have with the process so far. And the concern is with relation to the fact that the intensification piece and the greenfield piece have been separated. And one of the challenges that we have been kind of considering as we've been reviewing the studies is that we feel this could lead to more of a plan by numbers approach rather than more of a holistic growth management approach. In our opinion, we're looking for this type of growth management piece to be thought of holistically over a 30-year time horizon, as of course the 2051 horizon is. But this consideration of holistic planning means that the separation of intensification and greenfield makes that kind of holistic approach a bit more challenging. And while things such as intensification targets are good and we kind of support this process of going through, we think that the bringing forward a broader context in this consideration will lead to better outcomes with the growth management process. And just one quick example. So in the Bond End area, there are both existing and planned infrastructure upgrades that will enable significant development within that community there, both now and into the future. That will assist with the development of Bond Head as a complete community. And so as we consider growth management, we want to ensure that all of these types of development, both greenfield and intensification, are considered together, as ultimately within the town, it's our opinion that the process is growth management and how to consider the allocation of population, the allocation of growth across the entire town in these different types of development typologies. So that's it for the comment. I look forward to taking any questions at the time, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. We didn't mean to rush you, so you did an excellent job. Thank you very much. Okay, next up I have Tim Kane.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, staff, and the public that are patiently behind me. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Tim Kane. I am a professional planner at SGL Planning, and I am here representing our client Pearl Builders, who are the owners of 3087 Fifth Side Road. That's at the southeast corner of Line 9 and Fifth Side Road. Your capable staff does have a copy of my submission that I submitted earlier this week, so that will allow me to keep my submission brief tonight and just hit the high points before I get that 10-minute yank from this chair, which by all means I'm not going to require. For council's benefit, I want to touch on two main points. The first one is that we support the current official plan amendment. We think that it's great that you're bringing more lands on sooner, and certainly it's bringing that old secondary plan area of the employment lands into this current era where, you know, larger inventories and flexibility on those lands is very important. So thank you for doing that. The second point I want to touch on is the exclusion of light industrial uses that's currently proposed in the Highway 400 industrial logistics designation. That's the proposed designation on our client site. You know, we understand the value and importance of protecting large sites for large warehouse uses and large industries. You know, I know that these are the unicorns of the economic development world, and certainly appreciate, you know, lands being protected for that purpose. At the same time, though, we don't want to preclude or forget about light industrial uses that, you know, quite often hire a broader range of skill sets. They tend to have more employees than larger automated uses as well. And they provide an important stepping stone in that continuum of economic development. So, you know, certainly, you know, protect where we can for those larger uses, but let's not forget, you know, those smaller industries that may also want the benefit of being located next to transportation corridors like the bypass and the Highway 400. So like I promised, that was brief, but I do respect your time. We look forward to the reconsideration of that light industrial use in that designation, and I'll hang around for questions after if required. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that. I did have a name on here, Jeff Masadi. Would you like to? Nope. Nope. Okay. Very good. I know you didn't check mark it, but I thought I'd just check to make sure. So I went through this list. I will now open it up for further submissions from the public. So please come up, state your name, and come on up, sir. Come on up, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Dan Stone. I'm a planner with Thorstone Consulting. My client is Tessa Developments, who owns lands 45 and 50 Drury Street, which are located on the west side of Drury Street, just south of Gap Lane. These lands are adjacent to the MTSA as identified in your draft official plan, and also adjacent to the Holland Street West SGA. My client is in the process of finalizing designs for a 8-story purpose-built rental apartment building on this site. We've been through some discussions with staff. We've met with staff and the consultants through the open house process. We've considered the fact that the lands to the south of my client's lands do support an existing 8-story rental building. I think it's known as Park Manor. And we're also monitoring the recent approvals by this council of the Giancola lands to the north. And our submissions are basically that these lands, in order to facilitate my client's proposal, should be captured within a different land use designation that is currently proposed under the official plan, which is the residential built-up area. And I think based on the land use context and the existing built form that's in place and what's been approved recently, that the Holland West SGA designation would be most appropriate for this property and would help facilitate, as I mentioned, my client's proposal. So those are the submissions that we've made. We did make a submission to the official plan process. I think this was circulated to the mayor and members of council last week. We filed this written submission with the clerk's office last week. So we're hoping to continue to have discussions with staff moving forward. I will also mention the other aspect of the recommendations that we've put forward, and that has to do with Gap Lane itself, which is the unopened municipal road which connects from Drury Street to Holland Court. And we've been made aware that it is very much a desire of this council, and from a transportation planning perspective, that road needs to be connected. So we have made some recommendations as it relates to your official plan, your transportation master planning study, and your development charge background study as well, to help achieve that objective. So with that, Mr. Mayor, members of council, those are my submissions. And again, we did file this submission with the town offices last week, and I'm happy to answer any questions if they arise.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stone. I will make another call for anybody that wants to come up from the public that would like to make a submission here. I'll make another call, second call for anybody who wants to come up from the public. And I'll make a final call from the public then. Okay. Seeing none, it's council. Council members are now invited to ask final questions of planning staff, the consultant, and/or provide final comments, suggestions regarding official plan amendments for the growth management to 2051. I've got Councilor Kike first.
If I may direct the question to one of the open forum speakers, DG Group mentioned that they wanted to build a complete community in Bond Head, and I guess my comment right now is it's very incomplete. There's just new homes being built, but no commercial. If you want to buy a loaf of bread in Bond Head, you have to go to Beaton, Schaumburg, Cookstown, or Bradford. So if there's any consideration of any growth in Bond Head, it should include commercial. Because right now it's just, why would you want to spend $1.8 million for a home on a small lot and then have to drive miles to get a loaf of bread or a bag of milk?
Thank you. Mr. Watchorn, would you like to reply?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks through the chair. And first of all, yeah, thank you very much for the question. And I think that's actually a really critical question as we consider growth, and especially on such a long time horizon, is how do we consider growth and growth management to ensure that the communities that we're developing here are considered as complete communities? And of course, right now it's a very kind of preliminary phase as we are in with the growth management process, and we're considering how this process can evolve to span this kind of 30-year time horizon. But in terms of the consideration for the development of Bond Head as a complete community, that's one of the reasons why we're here today, is to ensure that growth management and this process can enable that to happen as kind of we go forward with the consideration for Bond Head.
Please go ahead.
So the existing residents have access to the current municipal sewers just to the pumping station, but they need to pay a lot of money to get there. There's also the downtown core where you would want to put some commercial, where we're going to have a heritage conservation district. They're all on septic beds, and there's no real chance of doing any commercialization along County Road 27 or County Road 88. And so how do we get that? Because that's going to be the key to Bond Head.
Mr. Washorn?
Sure, yeah, thanks through the chair, and thanks again for the question. And I think perhaps to kind of try to address that, as these kind of longer term, larger scale pieces of growth, both in Bond Head, but just generally in the town, are considered, things like servicing, things like access to amenities, and that is really the key for the development of complete communities. So while we are kind of at a very early stage in the process, as I'm sure you can appreciate, all of these types of questions are things that we would want to go through and understand how to answer that to ensure that we can develop and provide those amenities that are required to create a complete community. And we certainly believe that that is the path forward for Bond Head and the surrounding area there.
Perfect, thank you. Got Councillor Giordano next.
So I have two questions and maybe more of some commentary. The first one, during the presentation, it said 42% of all housing units will be built as infill. I just want to know approximately what the number of units would be, if we have that. Those two are consultants.
Yeah, can I have our consultants come back up for this, or?
Thanks for your question. So I can look it up, but I think it would be better, rather than me trying to find it on the fly right here, is we can get back to you on that one. It is in one of the larger reports. We did do it separately for the MTSA, so we have a unit breakdown for the MTSA, and then we have about the rest of the units within the existing built-up area. I believe it's about 10,000 and 10,000, but I'll have to get you a more accurate number.
Thank you. Second question. I don't recall the gentleman's name that was speaking about the area around Crosslands, where we have the transition from, I guess it's set up right now as industrial commercial. There's the new school that's been built in that area. My question is, when I look at kind of the areas that's zoned, we have this hot pink area, which is obviously in community use, which is where the school is, and we have commercial industrial on both sides of it. I'm not opposed at all personally to seeing something like that be converted into residential to continue with what's happening in that subdivision of Dreamfields. But my comment or my question would be the aerial parcel that's to the left of that backs onto some industrial. Would that not make sense as maybe a commercial application? So transition and buffer from commercial, or sorry, heavy industrial into like a retail, then into, because we have no retail in that area, it's much needed, and then transition into the housing in that area. Would that be aligned to what the vision was?
I call Keith McKinnon. He's the one that put that forward.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Giordano. So, good question. I think really the crux of the issue is the location. Put commercial in that location, the only traffic you're going to get is the local residents that live in that area. I think we all understand and appreciate that commercial uses need lots of traffic and lots of exposure in order to be successful. So the last thing you would want to have is a commercial use that's not successful. So ideally, if you're going to have commercial areas in that location, you want them on your arterial roads or your collector roads. That Crossland is neither in that location. So If you want commercial uses, you would want them along 8th line, but 8th line obviously is all developed in that location.
What I was speaking about is the actual blue zoned area that is on 8th line. That's the area that I was talking about. That actually is that's Crosslands and 8th line. And with the bypass coming in, with 8th line's future expansion, everything else, that area there, I'm not sure if those are your lands specifically.
Sorry, are you talking west of Langford, or you're talking?
I'm talking just east of Langford, the west area. That area just east of Langford, I believe, is undeveloped. It's an empty parcel sitting there.
Immediately north of Crossland on the west side of Heritage, the new elementary school.
So basically, based on what you provided, this blue area right here.
I can't see that.
Yeah, come on over here. This is your document, anyways. Right here. That's not our parcel. That's not your parcel. It's not your parcel, but that area there would make sense for commercial, so. That's the point I was trying to get at. So I didn't know if that was your particular parcel, but an area like that would make a lot of sense for commercial, and then transferring into residential to, I guess, the other blue zones that are just north of that, just west of that, sorry. Those are your properties, correct?
So we are from Langford to Professor Day.
Yeah, okay. So I could see that transitioning into residential. That makes a lot more sense. The one, I guess, to the west of Langford, that makes more sense as a transition piece instead of industrial backing onto across the street from homes. So that's the point I was trying to get at. So thanks. I wasn't sure which was yours or which was not, but my points still stand.
Okay.
Thanks. And I have a bit of a general statement as well. So, yeah. You know, at the end of the day, we've heard from a lot of people from the development community. There's a lot of people asking to convert, you know, commercial industrial into residential, and I understand why, but this town's in desperate need of commercial industrial. We're a commuter town. We need employment. We don't want everybody driving into Toronto, Vaughan, and everywhere else to work. Regardless, we need those commercial industrial buildings. I do agree with one of the comments earlier where we want to have a little more diversification in our employment lands area. I think that's very important to make sure that we have the right type of businesses that come. Again, massive mega warehousing is all the rage across North America, but with all the automation and everything going, there's not a lot of actual jobs that take place. So we need to be very strategic and smart about our employment lands and make sure we have the diversification to allow the right type of businesses to actually facilitate some good job opportunities in our town. Also, it's our job, or I'll speak for myself. We need to balance the needs of this town, right? The future growth and responsibility of the people who live here right now. The developers are all welcome to be partners with us. We want to partner with the developers, but ultimately we're responsible to the people who live here now, not to the people who are going to come here in the future. We're trying to get to come here. So at the end of the day, I've heard, a lot of the consultants, we want to, change some of these designations and everything else, but, our responsibility is we want to be focused on what the people want. And at the end of the day, together we can work together to compromise, but it has to be a compromise for the residents.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. Okay, I have Councillor Harper and then Councillor Scott after.
Thanks, Mayor. I do have a couple questions in regards to Area 2 of the Holland Street SVGA or SGA, either to the consultant or staff. Yeah, why don't you come up?
So WSAP,
Thank you.
is ever coming up?
Pertaining towards Area 2, I would just like to get your take on why you're rolling it down to, or keeping it as a zone of 2 to 6 in regards to story height.
That's going kind of west of Professor Day Drive. I think that's one of the key pieces of feedback that was flagged to us, that you kind of had this step down going from 6 all the way down, 8 down to 6. The area right now is all low rise, so it would be pretty much of a jarring transition to go from what it is today, going all the way up to 8. And And we were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. So either we're going from 1 to 8, which is not good, or we're stepping down the other way.
So why would you, if you're talking about consistent planning practice, go down to 6 while granting 8 stories to Area 1 where there's nothing there? There's already existing buildings that have 8 stories in Area 2. So your point really seemed moot. I would confer that you actually look at that and actually go with a lot of the buildings that are already there at 8
Okay.
in Area 2.
I think that's a good point. We can kind of take a walk and see how it would fit. I will note that Area 1 does represent, a fairly significant intensification opportunity.
I agree. You're not wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to make that cross-reference. There's already buildings. We even have another building there. It's already being built right now. That's 8 stories. Plus, we have legacy buildings there that already have, 8 stories around there. Like even one of the developers around the Gap Lane here mentioned one of them already.
Yep.
Just to have a look at that. The other part I want to talk about was the point number 1 on here. It's west of Side Road 10 and Line 8.
Okay.
And it's designated to be, I guess, special policy area, but also looks like residential across from Magna. What is the proposition that you're proposing there?
So that'll be the new designation, right kind of at Side Road 10 and Holland, or going further north on Side Road 10?
The color looks like it's like mixed or medium density or whatever. What are we proposing there? And like when Magna talked about its concern of having residential corridor or pedestrian and stuff, why stick away from the industrial commercial part of that?
So I'll have to get details on that. But right now, what we're proposing is the current community commercial along Holland. That would basically become the new corridor. So you already have permissions for a variety of uses that would back onto the industrial area. Do you have a... Okay.
I know, it's a little bit more. Thank you, Alan. No.
Yeah, I think we're getting confused on the site.
I changed it to a different location here. So
okay.
We're up at Line 8 and Side Road 10.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kamal. Through your worship to Councillor Harper. So the area that you're referring to, I understand, is identified essentially as label 1 and 2 in Schedule B1 to our official plan. That area is not proposed to see a change. So not proposed to see a change in land use designation through the OPAs presented to council and the public this evening. The special policy area that applies to those lands, I did indeed put them into an employment designation many years ago. The policies presented through the employment conversion official plan amendment would merely propose a set of criteria that would apply to folks who might have aspirations to redesignate their lands from employment to residential, but it does not propose any specific redesignations of land. They would remain industrial as presented in this OPA unless council were to determine otherwise.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense. Mayor, to you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Scott, and I've got Councillor Dyke after.
Well, thank you to everyone who presented and shared their comments. Like Councillor Giordano said, we're trying to figure out a way to deal with a provincial growth mandate and do it in such a way that A, respects the existing residents, B, conserves farmland, and C, builds a better community. Yes, there are requests to open up parcels of land and extend the urban boundary, but we want to avoid sprawl first. And so the intensification first approach of trying to have a bit more of a downtown in the downtown is key to that second step to protect farmland and avoid sprawl. I wanted to ask one question to our CAO. I'm very excited and very vocally supportive of trying to reanimate Bridge Street, revitalize the downtown, Dissette. We have public plans for the Holland Street transformation, so it's a more business-friendly downtown. We have plans around a riverfront trail, working with the province, the transit station area itself. What I think the planning documents are speaking about is how do we catalyze private sector investment to help us do that, specifically around recreation, more walkability, more commercial, and to paraphrase Jane Jacobs, if you want commercial to be successful in downtown, you have to put people downtown. So I'm just wondering about how we can speak to the next steps that come out of this planning exercise around what do we have to do for Bridge Street, what do we have to do to advance the actual practical nuts and bolts beyond just the planning document. We've spoken about it at a previous public meeting and a bit offline, but I'd just like to outline what I see as a really key piece of the puzzle going forward.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. So with respect to the Bridge Street corridor, we heard tonight through the review of the work their staff and consultant have done, really to no surprise, there are constraints to any extensive redevelopment in that area for a number of reasons. Floodplain is one of them, water table is one of them, high water table. The rail line is another constraint. Nonetheless, there are opportunities for that corridor to be more than it is today. And to get there, to understand what that future looks like, some more detailed work on those constraints would be required so that we have a better understanding of what the capacity is for development in the area. As part of that, we'd evaluate opportunities to improve the transportation network, look at urban design standards, look at improvements that we can make to our public space along the road itself. So I believe our planning engineering staff intend to propose some additional work for that area through a budget submission this year. And ultimately, it will meld into whatever council adopts for the framework around it.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, I'm eager to see that work continue. We have to set the table so that the private sector can take over from there. And the sooner we do the table setting, the sooner we can have the private sector come in and help build something that I think will really revitalize the area.
Okay, I got Deputy Mayor and myself, and then, Councilor Dyke first, sorry. Yep, sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship. 2025, it's quite a vision, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a lot of work for the planners and the public putting all your input in, and I appreciate all the publics here tonight that take an interest and take the time out of their schedule to come out and get involved in the community, because I've seen this happen in '96, where the public got involved in this, what we have now. Summerlin, behind No Frills, Zares, all these new subdivisions popped up, and we have commercial, and we had different transitions. So now we're moving on to another phase for 2025, and it's a lot of work, a lot of planning, and I see some developers that are stakeholders that have properties in town, and I hope that everybody hands in their submissions. There's a few representations, landholders, stakeholders that aren't here tonight, so we have to be fair to everybody, and the county of Simcoe will have a big stake in this. The province has set new mandates, and at the end of the day, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. Hydro, traffic, water, sewers, there's a lot to take in consideration. And I always said to bake a bread, you need all the ingredients. And this is to build a healthy community, a safe, healthy community. This is where the process begins, planning, and we have to get it right. 2025, 2051 is a long way away, but I see in 2032 at the horizons, and 2051 is just around the corner. Decades go by quickly, and Bradford, West Gwillimbury is going to be a very aggressive, young, happy community, and I just want to make sure that you guys, the future council, get it right and plan a well-balanced community. And one aspect of it, other than artesian, and I always felt in the official plan we never had enough small industrial commercial units for the smaller businesses. We have the big, we're very fortunate to have the Magnas and the different big businesses that came to town along the 400 highway, but we need a little bit more smaller, that 10, 15, 20,000 square foot smaller warehouses for employment. There's a lot of smaller businesses that need a opportunity in Newmarket, and Aurora has much more than we have when it came to planning for their smaller units. And I just hopefully in the official plan we can pick up smaller units, more commercial. We're lucky we have Smart Center. That was a big project for them back in the day. I don't think, living here my whole life, I would never believe to see a Walmart and a Home Depot come to town when I think about it. But these are things that are all going to come. Hopefully someday we see a Costco on the 400 corridor. We got hotels now. We have a great community, and this community will continue to grow. But this gives you a good aspect of what's going to come in 2051. So it's exciting times for the whole community to see the future. So we got to get it right.
Thank you. I've got Deputy Mayor next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I want to begin by saying thanks to basically everyone that's involved with this, whether it's consultants, staff, residents, anyone that's contributing to this, because this is, in my mind, setting up our municipality for future and for success, and it is so important that we get this right. We have to look at all the options, all the things, and also look at the bigger picture, because whether we like it or not, this municipality is going to grow, and how it grows is up to us around this table with our residents, that we control that. I agree with the comments that Councillor Scott made about the Bridge Street. That is our gateway coming into the town. Now, when I'm looking at it, we're constrained with floodplain issues in that area, and I recognize that. On the Dissette Street portion of it, is the pink portion, that says that minimum 6-story and maximum 12. I think that's the right approach. But the question I have is on the west side of Dissette. I see it, but on the east side, some of that area right beside the goal is also part of the floodplain, but it's marked as same colors as the others, 6 to 12. If we can overcome the floodplain issues in that area, I'm sure with today's technology and all the things that are there, that we can look at the Dissette Street also, that can be developed. So I just want to know, are we also saying that the east from Dissette in that pink area can also be 12 stories?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that the east portion of Dissette is going to face the same challenges as Bridge Street. It's part of the same floodplain. While it is all pink, the heavy lifting is going to be done on the west side of Dissette. But through the work through Bridge Street and looking at the floodplain, I think in the long term there's potential for some of that to come online. But the reality as it stands today is realistically the west side of Dissette is going to carry the intensification.
Okay, thank you. And before I go back to council members, I'd just like to comment to myself a little bit, and I want to thank the presenters for coming here tonight. Great job by WSP. You've done a great job of looking this over, phase 1. And I just, I want to comment that the employment lands, converting employment lands right now is going to be a difficult thing for me. I was a little disappointed with the county's overall employment lands for us in Bradford. They didn't really allow us any extra. They just said this is what you're going to get. So they gave us population growth, but they didn't give us some more employment lands. And I'm understanding growth is growth. We're going to have more homes, but in the end, I certainly want to make sure that we have job opportunities for the folks that are going to move here to work and live and play in Bradford. So lots of good stuff in here, but there's a lot of work left to do, council, and I know we'll work hard to make sure we come with the right plan, because we do have great areas that we can actually build some growth in. The intensification number, 42%, it sounds large. It's a task we want to do, and it's all about saving Greenfield to make sure that we can bring the growth here that has to come from the provincial policy statement. So, if we get anywhere near that, it doesn't mean we're going to get 42% intensification, but if we get somewhere near that, it certainly saves acreages of land out in the Greenfield. So we'll work hard to make sure that we do it right. We build property. We have some good areas around the GO station that we can add in great growth in there to meet those targets, to meet those intensification targets. But it's a lot of work ahead, and we'll certainly make sure that we take care of the residents to the best of our ability to ensure that we get the right growth. I think Councillor Dickey hit it on the head. It's about balance. It's about doing the right thing to make sure that we get what we need to be a great community to live in. So I will go to the next councillor, Councillor Verkuyk.
Gentleman in the front with the blue blazer and the white shirt mentioned something about Gap Lane. And if you can figure out how to get Gap Lane back open again, please come to the table. because it's a pain in the ass to get around downtown without that open. And then, of course, I didn't see Rice Group here because I'd love them to come with a Costco, but we'll wait.
Those are wants, and we certainly want those. The gap lane's in need, so don't worry. We're going to focus on that. We'll certainly get that into our growth plan for sure. Mr. Stone brought that forward through his client. He's talked about it, and we'll get there. And one day, hopefully, we can have a Costco here for sure. It's difficult with Costco being on the other side now, and East Gwillimbury gone further, so it's not in our favor. Okay, any further comments on this file? Okay, so I'll step in. I'll move on then. It's thank you, gentlemen, for everything. So further action. Council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive the staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So I have a recommendation, Council. The report, PLN 2025-47, regarding the Public Information Meeting Part 1, Intensification First, Growth Management Exercise to Plan 2051 Official Plan Updates be received, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting will be received, and that the Office of the Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in its recommendations report. Move a second, please. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Giordano. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we're on to our council. Do you want a break? Anybody want to break for a minute, or we're good to go? Ahead. Okay. Okay, we'll carry on then. We'll push on. We'll give a couple of seconds for people to leave. I know there's some people here that came specifically for this, so if you're here just for the growth plan, please make your way out if you feel like it. Otherwise, you can stay for the other public planning meetings. Put that over there. Okay. Our next planning report is the Public Information Meeting Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application. Zoning Bylaw Amendment, owner is Rock Building Corporation, Inc. So I have agent Romanov Architects Incorporated. So planning report. Planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the staff report being presented pertains to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. So, Anna? Oh, Priscilla, sorry. Sorry, Priscilla, go ahead.
No worries.
That's on my last report.
So good evening, council and members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment regarding 123 Holland Street West. So just to start off, I'm just going to go over what will be discussed in this presentations today. So on the next slide, you'll see just a brief overview about the purpose of the public meeting, the posting of the public notices, a bit about the application, summary of the comments received, as well as concluding remarks and the next steps in the process. So on the next slide, you'll see the purpose of the public meeting. So the purpose tonight is to introduce the development proposal to council and the public, as well as to invite questions and to seek input as well. So council will not be making a decision tonight, and the matter will be reflected back to staff to consider with the results of the public information meeting, as well as the circulation that was made. So if anyone is interested in providing comments regarding this application, please send an email to plan@townofbw.com with your name as well as your municipal address. So in terms of the public notices, it is regulated by the Planning Act. So the signs were erected on the property, and it was published in the Bradford Today, as well as the town website on August 19th of 2025. And the owners within 120-meter radius of the property were notified of the development. On the next slide, we'll learn a bit more about the application itself. So a previous application for zoning bylaw amendment was made, and this application has to do with a revision to that amendment. So previously, 8 stories was proposed for the area. This application is proposing an additional stories on the building, which would result in a height increase of 30 meters. The total number of residential dwelling would increase to 114 units. The height for the rooftop structure would also increase to 7.5 meters. The height requirement would increase to 23 meters in terms of additional front and east setbacks. as well as there's a proposed reduction of commercial and residential visitor parking spaces. The application itself was submitted by John Romanov from Romanov Architects on behalf of the owner is Rock Building Corporation, Inc., and the application was deemed complete on August 13th of 2025. On the next slide, we'll see a bit of information regarding the subject land. So the property is located north on Holland Street West. It is south of John Street between Toronto Street and Church Street. So the property itself is about 0.16 hectares, and the property is currently under construction and fenced. The land is excavated, surrounded by shoring walls, and you can see materials, construction materials and equipment on the site. Surrounding the property, you see low-rise dwellings on the north and east of the property, an apartment at the south, as well as commercial use at the east, south, and west of the property. On the next slide, you see a comparative of what was proposed initially with further revisions as well as the current proposals. So it's a side-by-side comparison with red text on the side showing the terrace 8th floor as well as 9th floor to compare the two. So this is a self-elevation of the building. So we'll be looking from Holland Street West. And the location here for the parking has remained unchanged with the with a total of 140 residential unit. They propose a modification to the residential visitor parking of 27 to 17 and a number of commercial parking from 9 to 4. On the next slide is the west elevation. So as if you're walking clockwise around the building. And on this building, you can see how the 9th floor and terrace are elevated on the right. So the height on the right has a maximum height of 30 meters, while on the left, it's 26. And on top of that, on top of the building, you see the rooftop structure, which increases from 3.5 meters to 7 meters. If we continue walking clockwise around the building, so on the next slide, we see the north elevation, which would be looking from John Street south. So from the elevation here, you can see that the actual ground level, at the grade, it's actually at the 2nd story, so the grade is actually higher towards the rear of the property itself. And you can also see the setback is higher up. So on the left, you see a setback for the property around the 7th floor, but that's a level higher, story higher in the current proposal. And in the last elevation on the next slide, you see again that grade variation from the south to the north, how it's higher up, as well as the setback as well on the property. On the next slide, we see the official plan, so information about what the policy says. It is located within the Bradford urban area. It's designated as downtown Bradford. The height designation between the area is between 2 and 6 stories, and unless a community benefit agreement is proposed and higher stories would be permitted. So based on the previous application, a community benefits agreement was agreed upon, in which 1.5 million cash contributes to support equitable housing were proposed, as well as installment of traffic calming measures along John Street, as well as a public easement over privately owned space. As per the submission received for the zoning bylaw amendment, the applicant indicated that no further contribution will be provided for the additional residential floor, other than the additional residential units would increase the tax base of the overall project. In the next slide is the details regarding the zoning bylaw. So the property is currently zoned as Core 1 exception, C1*16, hold 17. So the hold itself was removed with bylaw 2267. So the types of use permitted in the area are commercial and residential uses. The parent bylaw says there's a height of 18, but with the amendments from the last zoning bylaw, the height is identified as 26. And with the current proposal at hand, the zoning bylaw does not permit what is being proposed. On the next slide is details regarding the requested zoning. So again, identifying what is currently permitted. And in terms of the site-specific exception, there's an increase of maximum height from 26 meters to 30 meters. There's an increase in the permitted height from the rooftop structure connecting amenity space from 3.5 meters to 7 meters, as well as a change of the 5.5 meter setbacks requirement on the east side from 20 meters to 23. On the next slide itself, there's additional site-specific exception that is being made in terms of parking. So visitor parking requirement was previously identified from 0.24 dwelling that will be revised to 0.1 per dwelling, or from 27 to 17 residential visitor parking, so whichever value is greater. In terms of the commercial parking, it's identified previously to have one parking space for 22 meters square of commercial unit, and it's been revised to one parking space per unit, or from 9 to 4 parking space, whichever is greatest. On the next slide, we see a summary of the comments received. So in general, there was no objections and standard comments were received from the County of Simcoe, Enbridge, as well as South Lake Health. Comments were also received from the Simcoe County District School Board, advising of no objection. On the next slide are the comments received from the town. So no objections were received for the zoning bylaw amendment from Fire Emergency Service as well as Finance. Development engineer did provide additional comments requesting clarifications regarding stormwater management, functional servicing, traffic impact, as well as the architectural. In terms of the public comments received, one comment was received from the public with an opposition to the proposal, identifying ongoing construction concerns impacting the access to the plaza, specifically due to trucks, debris, as well as materials that have slowed traffic, and like to point out the future impacts that it would have on Holland Street. So in conclusion, to any members of the public who would like to comment or receive notifications regarding the application, please send an email to plan@townofbwg.com. The owner and his agent is in attendance in this evening to answer any question that council may have. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Priscilla. And now I'll call up the applicant if they'd like to, and the representatives, if they'd like to give any more details, additional details.
Your Worship, members of council, my name is John Romanov, architect for the project. I don't really have any thing to add, but I'm certainly here to field any questions or provide commentary if you want further information.
All right, thank you, John. We'll call you up, and there's no, it's public first, public. Okay. Thank you. So members of the public are now invited to address council, provide any comments, and ask questions. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission and they are reading from it, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. Planning staff and the applicant and or the representatives. Oh, sorry, I'll stop there. Public first. So I'll have a call for the public if they'd like to comment. First call. Second call if the public would like to comment. And a third and final call if the public would like to comment. Okay. Seeing none, we will now give council an opportunity to ask questions. I've got Councillor Kike first.
Yeah, I guess you already you got the shovel in the ground and now you want changes again. I guess my only objection will be when it comes to council will be parking. We have a parking standards in our bylaws for a reason, and I just can't agree to keep reducing parking. Then the parking spills over into our public parking and no one can park.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Giordano.
Thank you. First, during the presentation, it was mentioned stories, additional stories were added, but I just want to confirm it's only the single story that's being added. One? Yeah, okay, you pluralized that. I wasn't sure if that was a mistake. I just wanted to make sure that it was just the additional story. So it went from 99 units to 114 units, so it's 15 more units. But the parking spaces went from 166 to 186, so it's an increase of 20 parking spaces. My only concern is the reduction from 9 to 4 commercial parking spaces. So, you know, we'd have to maybe work on that, make sure the logistics and everything else, because we want that retail to be successful as well. I'll make the statement now too. I fully support this project. I fully support the additional floor at this point. When you look at construction starts for condos in the GTA, they are at absolutely 30-year historic lows when both in construction starts and in forecast. So we're not just getting a place that people can purchase and own and start their family or move to Bradford. Maybe it's for a lot of people's children who have, you know, not a lot of options, and it's a pretty sweet looking building. So at the end of the day, these are the types of projects I think the downtown area needs to consider this increase in height, because with this we get proper commercial in that area. We've got the people living above. They're going to help. All those people have to go to restaurants. A lot of them don't cook nowadays, right? Especially if it's the youth. That helps regentrify that whole downtown area. So I do appreciate the reasoning behind it. I'm sure it has to do with optimization of you know, the construction process, right? If you're going 8 floors to add an additional floor, maybe it helps the feasibility study right now. Construction costs have gone up significantly, and frankly, the prices have you know, either stayed or slightly decreased depending on which geographic area you're in. So this is one that I can, you know, I can understand the reasoning for it, and it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I've got Councillor Harper and then Councillor Dyke.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Priscilla, for the presentation, and thank you to the developer for bringing this forward. This project is definitely one that's been waiting and was approved back in previous council. When it was approved previous council, there was 202 parking spaces. Now it's proposed 207 parking spaces. So there is an increase, like my colleague mentioned over here in Ward 4. So thank you for clarifying that. I do agree, though, that having 27 of the visitor parking from 17, maybe we can do a shift there for the commercial, because we really want to. This is one of the projects that I think is really going to intensify downtown for the right reasons. We really want to make sure that we're maximizing the type of people that are coming downtown. With the reduced parking supports walkability and transit, which we want to try to transition to. I mean, this council just did approve a electric public transit system on buses, so, or to get a procurement for that. So that is coming. So we do have bunch of opportunities here. When you establish downtown Bradford as a growth center, this is going to meet one of the intensification targets. It's really going to strengthen the economic and cultural vibrancy of downtown, especially with the downtown revitalization. It's going to provide inclusive housing for senior professionals and that commercial aspect as well. So embracing density in this area will avoid stagnation. So I'd like to just make a statement, though, that adding this 9th story to Holland Street West project here is consistent with Bradford's official plan goals for intensification. It supports downtown economic vibrancy, expands our housing diversity, aligns with the precedent of existing buildings in the corridor that we've already seen, and we just talked about that in regards to Area 2 for that growth management plan as well. Don't step down, keep consistent. This project is going to contribute to community benefits that were already secured, and it's going to increase our tax base. So I would like it to help shape a more resilient and people-focused downtown core. So I thank the developer for bringing this forward.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Dyke.
I too would like to echo those words, as Ward 6 Councillor mentioned. This is going to be a real transition in the downtown core. This is setting example. When I just heard about the project years ago, when I just heard that when the land was sold, and this was a concept plan, and I give the development community, the family, great, I guess, comments on the fact that they took this project from a lot to what it is, 8 to 9, as long as the logistics work out, the parking works, and there's commercial added. I think a community builds within a community, and it does provide opportunity for seniors as well as a young family or a young entrepreneur that's our kids, let's say our children, have an opportunity to buy something in this municipality. And housing starts in Toronto and Richmond Hill and the GTA. The condos have come to a halt, as Councillor Joe said, in 30 years is quite a concerning and very alarming situation. So I would hope to support them because at the end of the day, the pandemic and the costs have skyrocketed, and I'd like to see this project, and hopefully they have other lands, I believe, to the east, and hopefully that project comes in, and all the people that have property in Bradford that can identify. It's not easy to do. They put your money where your mouth is. It's easy to talk about planning, but at the end of the day, to do it, it's not easy. And I give everybody credit for putting their money where the mouth is. So at the end of the day, they're building a project is going to help the downtown core, is going to provide walking, because people can stay in the downtown core, they can go to restaurants and shop downtown, and it's on the main street of Holland Street. So it's quite a interesting project, and I'm excited to see it come to this at this point. Only comments. Thanks, Your Worship.
Problem. Thank you. I've got Councillor Scott and then Deputy Mayor.
Well, I've been proud to support this project from the beginning, and I'm gratified to hear that this is getting a lot of support around the table. I spoke earlier tonight about the need for the private sector to help us revitalize downtown Bradford, and in many respects, this project is the firstborn of a new revitalized downtown Bradford. My only question then is, given the comments tonight, how quickly can we have this back at council so the developer can have clarity about the path forward? And I forget which one of my colleagues mentioned this, but this is obviously going to help with the inflated construction costs and other factors that you're facing right now. So it's important that they get clarity, and frankly, I don't see any reason to delay bringing this back to council as long as staff can get it ready for us sooner than later.
Alan, would you have any timeline on that? Come on up. Got to get your work out.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Scott, although that was about 15 steps. Thank you. Much appreciated. So the usual process in an application like this would be we do a circulation to departments and agencies, we get the comments back, we feed those comments to the applicant. Some of those comments require no changes, no response. Some require some technical response from the applicant's project team. That's essentially the conclusion of one feedback loop. Once we get the comments back from the applicant to that, responses, we send those back to the same folks we circulated the first time, make sure they're happy, and at that point, if they confirm that any concerns or outstanding questions that they may have had are answered, then that positions staff, well, planning staff, to bring back a recommendation report. In this instance, I don't recall offhand the initial circulation timeline, but given that we are here in early September with this public meeting, I would anticipate that we are well positioned to hopefully bring this application to a recommendation report before the end of the calendar year. Precisely when, that remains to be determined, but that would be our goal. 3 months is our target time frame for standalone zoning amendments, and we'll strive to try to achieve that.
Okay, well, thank you, and I think I heard November.
Excellent. Thank you. I've got Councillor Sandu. Deputy Mayor Sandu, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I support this recommendation or the ask that's revised, including the parking. This, in my mind, is the perfect location for this kind of project to be in downtown. And don't forget, we have a couple of public municipal parking lots in the vicinity that people can utilize. These days, I think people feel that they're entitled to have a parking right in front of the commercial unit so they don't have to walk a couple of steps. When you go to the bigger cities, that is not the case. As long as you have the parking in the area, you park and walk up to that commercial unit that you need to go to. So I look forward to the final report coming to council, and And by the sounds of it, I think it's going to be supported, and I want to see this project completed ASAP. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for those comments. Councillor Harper wants to say something again, so back to you.
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to really talk about the construction project and the other supporting ones moving forward. And it's really big shout out to the staff that work with a lot of these developers. And the developers actually is working with the staff in regards to issues or concerns brought up by the public in regards to construction. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it in their backyard. I understand that. But you know what? I feel that this term we really made a breakthrough in really listening to a lot of residents. And the developers are really on board with actually helping with a lot of these, resolve a lot of these issues. We've had numerous ones that I've been encountered with, and I'm actually just really in awe of the communication, but also the support from both sides, from all sides, staff, residents, and understanding from them, and the work from the developers. So let's just keep that going. I really hope that we're really onto something here, and involving community and construction can happen, even though when we're in a downtown core, it's really on the spotlight, especially if you see a crane out there, we can see it forever. But you know what? It's going to happen, and it's the way forward, but let's just keep that communication and teamwork going.
Yes, excellent comment. Thank you. And that is great. I will say, I just want to comment last, if you don't mind. I'm not going to get too much into it, but I will give total credit to the developer. Young man struggled through some of the worst economic downturns we've had in history, as far as I'm concerned. We're 7 years into this. I think we're 7 years into this, and to pursue this. And then I think, Councillor Giuliano, you talked about, a 30-year low. It is an absolute disaster in the city of Toronto when it comes to condo sales and condo buildings. They're not moving. This young man has pushed and pursued, and with the help of our staff, we're going to get that building. He is adamant that he's going to build that building. The sales have come to a snail's crawl at everything. I mean, we were just up at the county. We were talking to some county reps. They were saying at the county that there's no sales throughout the whole county. So it's difficult. He's persevered. I appreciate that very much. He's always been there to work with our staff to make sure that he provided a product that we're going to be proud of. I can tell you right now, we're going to be very proud of that product. I think it's a very nice product. If everyone wants to see it, he's got his showroom over on Holland Street by the sports medicine building that was the old liquor store. So go and look at that product and you'll see, and maybe it'll be inspired to buy a condo unit. But we'll work hard with you, Claudio, and we'll make sure that you're successful and we get a great building in our community that people can really enjoy, because you've got that public parquet in there that's going to be beautiful for people to come and sit and have a coffee. So with that commercial down there. So thank you very much. Any other further comments? Okay. So, further action. Council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive a staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a future recommendation report at a later date. Recommendation. The PLN-2025-46 regarding public information meeting application zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-25-10 for the lands known as 123 Holland Street West, legally described as Plan 122A, PT Lot 18, Plan 49, Lot 5, be received, and the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in its future report. Moved by Councillor Harper, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, that's another one down. Last one for tonight. 7.4 Public Information Meeting Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application. Zoning Bylaw Amendment, owners Karen Mills and Tom Mills, Agent Land Pro Planning Solutions, Inc., care of Michael Sullivan. So we have a planning report. Planning staff will now present the contents of the staff report. Please note that the staff report being presented pertains to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. The presentation by staff will contain an update on comments received to date and does not include a recommendation on the proposal. Town staff will provide a report at a later date, which will also reflect and consider the public comments made during this public meeting and written submissions received before the report is written. Priscilla.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, good evening again, Council, some members of the public. Thank you for attending this evening's public meeting, as well for the zoning bylaw relating to the property of 4023 Line 3, 4051 Line 3, as well as the vacant parcel of land described as Concession 2, Part Lot 3 of 51R 35756 Part 2. So to start off with the presentation, I'd just like to go again over a brief overview of what we discussed today, which includes the purpose of the public meeting, posting of the public notices, details about the application, summary of comments received, a few concluding remarks, as well as next steps. So in the next slide, we'll see the purpose of the public meeting. So the public meeting tonight, we would like to introduce the development proposal to council as well as the public, to invite any questions as well as to seek input. Council would not be making a decision tonight. This matter will be referred back to staff regarding the results from the public meeting as well as the review of the comments from the circulation that was made. Once staff has done a review, the report will be brought back to council with a recommendation. Should anyone would like to provide any comments regarding the application or would like to be notified regarding when this application will be going back to council, please email plan@townofbwg.com with your full name as well as your municipal address. On the next slide, we'll see the posting of public notices. So this process is regulated by the Planning Act, and on June 23rd of this year, signage was erected on the property fronting on line 3. And on August 18th, it was published in the Bradford Today, the town website, as well as notices were sent to neighboring property owners. Over 30 property owners were notified, which exceed the 120 meters requirement. On the next slide, we'll see details regarding the application itself. So this is a second submission that was made for a zoning bylaw amendment. Revisions to the submissions include the revision of the overall gross floor area, which includes the tiny homes, the orchard processing building, the outdoor farmers market. They have removed the proposed livestock barn. They include 2 neighboring properties to the application and are proposing 3 residential units on each lot, which entails 1 primary dwelling and 2 accessory dwelling units on the properties. So the application itself was submitted by Michael Sullivan from Land Pro Planning Solutions, Inc. on behalf of the owner, Karen Mills. The application was received, or the submission was received on June 6th of this year. On the next slide, we'll see details regarding the subject land. So the property is located north of line 2, south of line 3, east of County Road 27, and west of Canal Road. So the combined area of the properties is 4.164 hectares. So if we look at the larger parcel, which is outlined in red, if you can see, it is approximately 40.75 hectares. There are 2 smaller parcels that are vacant at the top left, the one in the middle. The inner parcel would be 0.5 hectares, while the vacant parcel on the left would be about 0.4 hectares. So the larger property itself is used as a farm with occasional farmers market and event center. As for the 2 smaller parcels at the top left, they are vacant. Surrounding the property itself at the north, east, and south are known as agricultural. There's also agricultural on the west side as well as an estate residential property. On the next slide is the revised site plan that was proposed. So on the left is the overall site plan, and on the right is the section that is zoomed in to see the top section of the proposal. So the items identified in the site plan are specifically related to the on-farm and agricultural related uses. So the pink is the existing tiny homes or short-term rentals, while the purple is the proposed tiny homes. So there are 5 on the map. And as for the orange square, it's the proposed orchard processing building. So all the proposed buildings are connected via a road from the north of the parcel on providing access on line 3. As we travel down the path of this road, we go on to the next slide, which goes down to the next proposals that is being made. So the pink again is the existing tiny homes and short-term rentals. The blue is the converted barn into the event barn, and the green is the proposed farmers market. On the next slide is the policy associated to the project or the property itself. So it's located outside the Bradford area. It's designated as rural and agricultural and permits a range of agricultural uses. And as per the provincial planning statement, it permits agricultural ADUs as requested by the applicant. It is noted that in the initial submission at the time, this policy was not in effect. And following the submission, it did come into effect, permitting 2 additional residential units for the property, where 1 additional unit will need to be attached to a principal dwelling. While it's not identified within the official plan, provincial policies would override the town policies. On the next slide, we see the zoning bylaw for the property. So as you can see, if you can see, the 3 sections. So the top section is agricultural, the middle section is marsh agricultural, and the bottom is the natural heritage system 2. In terms of the development being proposed, it is within the agricultural and marsh agricultural section. So the uses would be, for example, agricultural, which is livestock barns and horse barns, but what's not permitted within those areas are short-term accommodations and event centers, the farmers market, the Archer Preston building, as well as the 2 accessory dwelling per lot. So in turn, as a result, a zoning bylaw amendment would be required in order to permit this on the land. On the next slide is what the applicant is proposing. So on the top is the agricultural exception area that they would have the orchard processing building as well as the 5 short-term accommodations. On the next slide would be the marsh agricultural exception. So the uses permitted is a bit more restrictive in this area, but in terms of the exception being proposed includes the event venue, the farmers market, and as well as the short-term accommodation. On the next slide shows the location of both the agricultural as well as the marsh agricultural for the accessory dwelling unit that they would like to implement, where all 3 of the properties would be within this area. Okay, and in the next slide, we see the comments received to date from external agencies. So at this time, no objections were received, and standard comments as well were received from Bell, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, South Lake Health, and the County of Simcoe identified that the size limitation of the on-farm diversified use and the proposal should be reflected accordingly. In the next slide, we see the comments received from town today. So in summary, there was no objections that were received pertaining to the zoning bylaw amendment from capital engineering, from fire emergency services, as well as transportation. Clarification was requested from development engineering, from infrastructures, as well as facilities and the park division. And the finance division advised that there's outstanding accounts receivable. In terms of public comments received, at the time preparing the report, 1 comment was received identifying opposition to the proposal with the events venue and the potential variation of the proposed uses. They identify specifically such as multi-day loud music events. Following the preparation of this presentation, 1 additional comment was received, and they were in support of the proposal. In conclusion, should anyone like to comment regarding this application or to receive further notification on when this report will be going back to council, please email plan@townofbwg.com. The representative is in attendance this evening to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Well done. I will ask the applicant if they'd like to come up and make any further comments.
Hello, Tom Mills. I just want to thank Priscilla for her part of the presentation and for this council for the opportunity to come back and address this. We're coming back with revisions. Our revisions were guided by 2 key factors. First, to reduce the scope of the site plan of the main property, to bring it below the LSRCA's definition of a major project, to effectively reduce fees and create a more manageable project in the near term. Our first point. Secondly, to take advantage of the opportunity presented by the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, which allows up to 2 additional residential units on agricultural lots or lands. This was an approach proposed by town staff. We determined that being able to add this request to our current rezoning application was wise to do, as we are yet in the rezoning process. And just to add a little bit here, the last time I presented, Councillor Giordano noted that he was aware of our desire to create intergenerational housing on our property, and if there were aspects in our plans to address this. Until PPS 2024, there really wasn't a tool to allow us to do that, and now we have that tool and have added that into our application. Just in closing here, I appreciate Council's support generally of the agricultural community and family farms in Bradford, West Gwillimbury, as I noted in my original presentation. I represent the 7th generation of my family to build a livelihood on the 3rd line of Bradford. The land has been our home and our work for generations. My nephew is the 8th generation as my children, and we continue in that tradition. It's my hope that my children will also carry this legacy forward, finding their place in both the family business and the homes here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. I'll now ask for public participation. So members of the public are now invited to address council and provide any comments and ask questions. Please provide your name and speak directly into the microphone. If residents have prepared a written submission that they are reading from, please submit it to the clerk upon completion of your presentation. I'll make a first calling for public participation. Seeing none. Second calling for public participation. Come on up. Speak in the mic, just press the button and...
Okay. Good evening, members of council, staff, and neighbors. My name is Carlos Valle. I am Bradford resident, I live in 62 Russell Drive. I'm also owner of Bradford Party and Event Rentals. I want to express my strong support to the Mills family and their vision. Farmland Farm has already proven to be a valuable asset to our community, not only as a wedding and event space, but also through their farmer markets to bring people together, celebrate local business, and create economic opportunities here in Bradford. As a local business owner, I know firsthand how important it is to have spaces like this farm to attract visitors, create jobs, and support other small businesses in town. I believe this request will have a positive effect through our community and encourage councils to consider the benefits it brings when making your decision. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for that. And if that's a written statement, could you turn that over to the clerk if you'd like, and it'll be documented. All right, thank you. Further comments? Yeah, public, come on up if you want to comment, please do. Just state your name and speak into the microphone. Just press the button on the microphone, please. There.
Good night. My name is Gloriana Franco. I'm the general manager for the Comfort Inn and Suite in Bradford. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm coming to 100% support them due to the weddings and all the events that they have on their in the farm. We have increased 100% of the occupancy at the hotel. So I'm allowed to schedule all my staff on Friday, Saturday, even Wednesday when they have an event, even provide transportation from the hotel to the event. And if you see the reviews, the hotel people are really happy with this. All they can have the weddings, they can have the social event, and they have a place to sleep. Thank you.
No, thank you. Great partnership. Okay, I will ask for a final participation from the public. If there's any more comments from the public. And I'll make one last call if there's any other people from the public who'd like to participate. Okay, seeing none, I will now turn it over to council for questions and comments. Any council? Councilor Giordano?
Well, since we'll continue our conversation from last time, I'm actually happy for your family that you're able to have the multi-generational aspect on that farm. Again, some people may look at how they can take advantage of the situation. What I like about it is that you're 7th generation, you said, and you have opportunity now to to house and create some more space for your family as well. So I think that's a vision. When we talk about ADUs and everything else, I get a little bit passionate about that in residential areas that aren't designed for ADUs. But I feel that agricultural ADUs where you can maintain the family living on the land and have a place for them to kind of grow with you and continue the legacy, it's extremely important. The revised site plan for sure, the tiny homes concept, I get it. It's not really my jam, but I understand the value of what you're trying to build on that space. To the people who did speak, we don't have a banquet hall. Hint, hint. Well, all the developers left. Anyways, we don't have a large-scale banquet hall, and we have a lot of cultures in Bradford that have really big parties. So these barns are kind of the unique thing to Bradford. Well, not unique to Bradford, but it's kind of our specialty here. So having an event space that can accommodate all kinds of family-oriented events is actually critical. It's a big gap in our community. So filling those with your proposal, I see it being very beneficial to the community.
All right, thank you for those comments. I have Councillor Verkake next.
Yeah, I've been supportive of this right from the get-go. I think it's the way to sustain our family farms. And, we have our 5,000-acre farmers out there, but there's very few 100-acre properties that can sustain themselves. And I met with Tom, and this was his business plan to try and make this the family farm. And again, they've been here since the 1820s or 30s. And all the kudos to your family and all the best. And thanks.
Tom's not been here since 1820 though, right?
No, there's not enough gray hair yet.
Just wanted to check. Okay. Councillor Harper next.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation and the application here. When you're talking about the agricultural uses on there, you have orchards on there right now, or you plan to transition them? I know it talked about an orchard barn or production thing. Can you talk a little bit about that plan to maintain that agricultural part of it? I am not against taking away advancements of like trying to earn bread and butter for your family and whatnot. I'm cautious because it does set a precedent for other avenues or other farms to come back with other types of proposals like this. So I just want to make sure that the right things are being done. And I know you probably are, but maybe you can clarify them for me.
We do not have orchards yet. The orchard and an orchard processing building, for lack of a better term for it, really came out of the start of the process of saying what is the vision for the property. But it's also looking at the agricultural side of it and saying what is the highest return on the land from an agricultural point of view. And I'm not completely sure that's going to be an orchard. My nephew and I were talking about this the other day. Is it sunflowers? Is it pumpkins? What is it? And that could change with economics or crops and so forth. I hope that answers the question. Yeah, I'm not. What I do know is that the events and so forth is completely viable, and I know that this year the ground had wheat on it and it still has corn on it, and we'll, in terms of the orchard and so forth, we'll see where that goes.
You know what, I know that that's a really good plan, like that you do plan on actually continuing the agricultural part of that. And that's really where I really wanted to go with that, is with, it may not be the economically orchards, but there is a plan to continue with the agriculture part of that. I think that's the key part. If anybody brought any other future proposals or amendments like that, is that sustainability of the agricultural part of that. I mean, we don't want to take it away, but there's still a plan to continue it. So thank you for clarifying that, and good luck.
Thank you.
So Tom, I'm not a farmer, but the lavender, I've been out to the lavender farms. I don't know if that's a viable product, but I'll tell you what, it's the same thing you're doing. I've been to the out in Caledon on one of them, and they have a lot of people coming through for lavender. And it cost me a lot of money that day for lavender. I had to buy bags of it. But it's some product, I guess, if you
Thank
want
you
to
for
look
the
at it.
suggestion.
Any further, yeah, any further comments in regards to this application? Okay, well, thank you, Tom. I know you've worked hard to get to this point, and we appreciate that. And we look forward to your event space. I think it's absolutely excellent. The tiny homes is a very interesting aspect. I've seen them a few years ago with you. I think it's great, and I'm actually certainly happy that PBS has given you the opportunity to actually build housing for your family. So that's very important. So great to see that.
May I add one final comment?
Yeah.
Just in this process, I just want to leave with this final comment. I've been consulting with town staff regarding development charges. I anticipate bringing a letter to town staff for consideration on how council may support on-farm diversified uses by exempting, lowering, or deferring development charges on projects such as ours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. So I'll move on to further action. The council will not make a decision on this matter tonight, but will receive staff report for information. The matter will be referred back to staff for a further recommendation report at a later date. So I have a recommendation. The report PLN 2025-44 regarding public information meeting application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-24-01 for the lands known as 4023 Line 3, 4051 Line 3, and parcel legally described as Concession 2, Part Lot 3, RP 51R35756, Part 2, be received, and that the comments received in writing and or made at the public meeting be received, and that the Office of the Community Planning consider the matters raised and address the same in the future report. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Verkuyk. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay. A quick follow-up here. So it is recommended that all comments or questions on planning applications be submitted in writing to planning@townofbwg.com. All comments or questions pertaining to the official plan amendments to plan for growth to the 2051 may be submitted in writing to planbwg2051@townofbwg.com. So we have any comments for the planning applications prior to our 2051 official plan amendment? 2 different addresses. So written submissions on planning matters are not required at a public planning meeting, but can be made at a later date and will be accepted up to the date that council makes a decision on the matter. Written submissions on planning matters will not be read at a council meeting, but will be forwarded to planning staff for consideration and or response. Council will be apprised of all public comments received prior to making a decision on the planning application. I'm in Section 8, confirm proceedings. Recommendation of the bylaw 2025-94, bylaw to confirm proceedings of the council meeting dated September 9th, 2025 be enacted. Moved by Councillor Dykey, seconded by Councillor Scott. All in favor? Carried. Adjournment. Recommendation of the meeting hereby adjourn at, what time is it? 9:02. Moved by Councillor Harper, seconded by Councillor Verkuyk. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great evening.